policies of this government might not change and might not make it any easier for people to make any money. Let's talk to Sacha Lord now, formerly the head of the nighttime economy up in Manchester, businessman, entrepreneur, impresario. I don't want to overdo it, Sacha, but very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike, and thanks for welcoming me into your new home.
Yeah, not at all. Really, really good to see you. I mean, obviously, the matter at hand is the state of the government and whether or not you're going to end up with a new chancellor anytime soon. But today we've got the downgrading yet again by the Bank of England of the economy for the next couple of years. We're going to be struggling. We're going to be paying more taxes. The hospitality business in particular, which is obviously where you are, is in a dire straits, isn't it?
Yeah, Mike, we're absolutely on our knees. And every time I come on your show, people have a go at me on Twitter for saying, well, you supported Labour, you were a Labour Party member. And I'll put my hands up, Mike. Yes, I was a Labour Party member. I've resigned my membership. The reason I was I was at the manifesto launch in Manchester during the start of the general election. And the Chancellor stood there and told the room and told myself and told the press that she was the Chancellor of business and growth. And quite simply, she couldn't be further from the truth.
Yeah.
You know, we've had 2 budgets since she came in. On her first budget, she raised national insurance. That has cost my industry, hospitality, the 5th biggest sector in the whole of the UK, the 3rd largest employer. It's cost us 120,000 jobs.
Yeah.
And I was just watching your show, Mike, and you were talking about the future for our grandkids, for our children. Well, when you dig down into those jobs, the vast majority are for kids between the age of 18 and 25 who want to support themselves, maybe with a Saturday job in the pub to get through college or university. Those jobs have gone.
Yeah.
And now she's stood there and increased all our business rates, which, by the way, during the general election, she said, I am going to help the pubs. I'm going to help the small family-run independent businesses by reforming the business rates. We'll help you, or we'll go for the big boys like the Amazons of the world, the big warehouses and the parcel forces. Well, the average pub business rate has gone up 76%.
Right.
Hotels are up 115%. And then she did a U-turn and said, well, actually, I wasn't fully... I didn't have all the stats and I didn't have all the figures when I stood at the dispatch box and made that. That is an out-and-out lie, Mike, because I'm the chair of the Nighttime Industry Association. We gave her the stats. Every single other trade body gave her the stats and she ignored us. And what happened? The public realised they were going to lose their local pub. So we started to ban MPs, didn't we? 1,500 MPs, 1,500 pubs banned Labour MPs. And they did a U-turn. So it's insulting. And you're right, the Chancellor has to go. Yeah,
I think so. The problem is, of course, people say to me about both Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves, if they go, which I sincerely hope they do, what comes next? I mean, you know, there really isn't anybody qualified in this government to run anything. I mean, we've seen how tone deaf they are when they talk about business. They don't really understand it. They don't get it. You know, on the one hand, she says she's going to help the pub business, and then she puts up business rates, you know, and then she puts up alcohol tax. And, you know, I was staggered, and I shouldn't have been probably, but there was a piece in one of the papers this week or last week about the price of a pint going up on average to say £7 something or other, even outside of London. I mean, in some parts of London now you're paying £9 for a pint. But out of that, most landlords are making about 47p.
It's less, Mike. So a pint at the moment now, when you pay your alcohol duty, which by the way is 20 times more than Germany.
Yeah.
So that's why when you go on holiday to Spain or wherever, you can buy a pint for €3 because we get tax built. You've got your VAT, you've got your beer, you've got your utilities, your staff, your rent, all those costs when they're factored in. The profit on a pint now is about 13 to 14p. So when the Chancellor increases business rates, which might cost, I was speaking to Tom Kerridge yesterday, and his business rates have gone from 50k to 140k.
Yeah, how is that even legal? I mean, how can they do that?
Exactly. And it is so worrying now. And, you know, I've watched the news this week, Mike. I was glued to PMQs.
Yeah.
And frankly, we are a global embarrassment. You know, it started off with Andrew Mountbatten or whatever whatever his name is now.
Yeah.
And now the heart of the UK government. What a global embarrassment are we at the moment? And for many years, I've looked at who I thought were conspiracy theories on Twitter and social media about these powerful men and controlling the world and getting away with things, these billionaires. And well, we're seeing now, aren't we, with these
Yeah.
Epstein files? It's actually true.
Yeah.
And I apologise to all those people who were telling me that the likes of Bill Gates and Bill Clinton and all involved. Well, we've seen the evidence now.
Yeah.
And this is right at the heart of UK government. This is the biggest scandal of a decade. And for him to stand there yesterday at his week press conference and say, I share your anger. You don't share our anger,
No.
Keir Starmer. You're not one of us. You are the man that ignored your intelligence services and defied them and employed Peter Mandelson in one of the cushiest jobs in the world.
Yeah.
And, just leave your post now.
Exactly right. Because we don't even know the half of it. I mean, I've been asking these questions all week, really. I mean, what was he doing when he was in Washington, Mandelson? When he was sitting in a very nicely upholstered, and I've been inside the embassy there, so I know and also the ambassador's residence in a very beautiful part of Washington, D.C. I mean, it's gorgeous. Who was he talking to when he was doing that job? Whose secrets was he selling to whoever it was that he was selling them to? I mean, I find it absolutely... And the thing that really, really, I think, pisses an awful lot of people off, and I apologise for swearing, is, nowadays, you become an MP, you become a politician, and you suddenly become very wealthy. And I'm starting to get a bit suspicious about that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And, people might know that I'm close to Andy Burnham. I worked as his nighttime economy advisor for 7 years, and I've witnessed in the last couple of weeks the lies that Number 10 spin. A government should not be able to lie. When they blocked him, do you know how he found out he was blocked, Mike? He read it in The Guardian.
You're joking.
This is No, he read it in The Guardian. Then 20 minutes later, they phoned him up. And this is someone that's dedicated 30 years of his life to the Labour Party. What a kick into what an insult. And then they turned around and said, well, actually, we told Andy Burnham that if he stood, that we would block him. We told him that in advance before he put his name forward. That was an absolute lie as well. And actually, Number 10 had to put a statement out retracting that.
Right.
And they're all over the place. It's concerned. You're absolutely right, Mike. We are a cruise liner with no captain, and we're heading towards... no one knows where we're going at the moment, but they should be running the country. And what Starmer has done is he's put himself, his job, before country and before party. And that is a huge, huge insult. And blocking Andy Burnham, well, he blocked the wrong man, didn't he?
Well, he did. Well, it's all gone a bit wrong for him since he did that, because if he hadn't done that, he might have had a chance of getting a bit of a boost by winning the by-election, because Andy Burnham probably would have won the by-election. But now it looks like Labour are going to be pushed probably into third place. Reform might win it, but a lot of people are now predicting people will vote Green. They'll get the Muslim vote. They'll also get the disaffected kind of left of the Labour Party as well. And so there's nothing good on the horizon for old Starmer, who's obviously lost the key to the bridge on the cruise liner, to carry on with that analogy. And there's a couple of icebergs looming ahead. And like you say, the thing that I think annoys people the most about him is that he just lies, out and out lies. I mean, he came back from China and he stood up in the House of Commons and he said, I took 60 top business leaders with me. He didn't. He took some multinational CEOs, but an awful lot of the people that went were people that ran things like the Natural History Museum. And he took the West Midlands mayor with him, the so-called cultural leaders. I mean, he should have been taking people like you and saying, right, what business opportunities can we get out of China? I don't particularly want to do business with China, but if that's what we're going to do, take some people who know a thing or two about business. What's the point of taking the leader of the Natural Bloody History Museum?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, to be honest, I probably wouldn't risk myself sitting in the same plane as Starmer at the moment. But yeah, for the sake of the country, he needs to go. It's an absolute circus that we're watching at the moment. And if he thinks for 1 minute it's going to go away, I know he's listening to McSweeney, but he's got this one absolutely wrong. This is not going away. As I said, This is the biggest scandal in 100 years of my lifetime. Bigger than Profumo.
No question. No question. I said this at the beginning of the week. I said it's easily the biggest political scandal of this century. And then the more I thought about it, actually, I mean, I was sort of barely alive, I think, when the FUMO thing kind of was going on. And I don't really remember it. But this is bigger than anything that's ever happened in my lifetime, that's for sure. And the thing is that his continual kind of inability to see the truth, because I think he's been lying for so long, like a lot of people who lie, they forget, they don't know what the truth is, you know. And for him to now try and play kind of the victim and say, oh, you know, I was lied to by that horrible man, Peter Mandelson. Oh, well, really? You know, how are you the only person in Britain who didn't know Peter Mandelson was a liar?
Yeah, and I have to say, you know, the leader of the opposition, Kemi, tore him a new one.
She
on
did.
Wednesday at PMQ. I was actually very impressed with her. She was very statesman-like. Can you say statesperson-like before the woke brigade jump on me? But yeah, she was very, very impressive, actually.
I thought she did it really well because she did it in a kind of calm, quite forensic way. He used to talk about being forensic, you know. Well, he's not. As people said to me, you know, yes, I think she's got a law degree, but she appeared to be a better lawyer than he is, and she's not a lawyer.
Yeah, absolutely. Calm, collected. She knew what she was doing.
Yeah.
And he looked like a broken person, actually. People were talking about handshaking. I've not seen that, but I think he knows. I think he knows time's up. It's just how and when.
Yeah.
And you talk about him on the back bench as well. You know, I think somebody who's ignored what's happened with Mandelson doesn't even deserve to be on the back benches. They need to be out of Parliament. Yeah. You know, just get on with something else.
Couldn't agree more.
As you said, they represent the public. They need to go.
Yeah. So are you kind of politically homeless now then? Because a couple of people have messaged in to say, what do you think of reforms plans for the pub business? For example, they announced the other day that they would reduce VAT, which I know is something you've asked for in the past, down to 10%, and to cut business rates and make it easier for them to make money.
Yeah, I mean, I welcome what they announced with open arms. You're right, they're talking about reversing NI, they're talking about cutting VAT, reversing business rates. You know, this is all welcome. I worry that they've not got the numbers right. A couple of trade bodies have caught them out on that. I think Bournemouth University run the numbers. It doesn't quite stack up, but they are definitely, you know, that is where we need to be looking at. A VAT reduction for this sector is absolutely what we need. And if you think about it, the last chancellor that did this was Rishi Sunak. Yeah. I don't know if you remember, coming out of COVID, he reduced VAT down to 5%.
I do remember that, yeah. I used to go out, because I used to be in sort of shock sometimes. I'd go out for lunch or dinner or something, and I'd go, blimey, there's hardly any VAT on this. This is great. It was fantastic.
Yeah, it saved businesses, but more importantly, that saved jobs.
Yeah.
Now, we pay the highest VAT in the whole of Europe. On average, there's a sector-specific VAT number of about between 7 and 8%. Obviously, we're at 20%, so we've all been calling to reduce VAT. Yeah. Even if you reduce it down to 12.5%, would still be the 26th most taxed country in Europe. That's where we are. So, yeah, it's welcome what they're talking about. And, you know, I'd say to the other parties like the Tories and, you know, the Greens, and let's start talking about hospitality, because as I said, we are the 5th biggest industry in the UK. We're the 3rd largest employer. And we were the first ones to close during COVID. We were the last ones to open. We're saddled with debt, and we're being taxed up to the eyeballs. And it just feels like at the moment we're an industry who are just collectors of tax. And I know people, Mike, who haven't taken a wage for 12 months, operators. Yeah. You know, they're running the pub to pay the staff, to look after the customers, you know, to look at the old fellas that go in there at 6 o'clock by themselves, who've lost their wives and sit there nursing a pint for 2 hours. You know, it's more than just a pint. We are part of Fabric DNA. We're a community service. And the government failed to understand that. Yeah, they do. And because of the way that they've come up through the ranks of the political business and you know, local councils and charities and all of that, they have no clue. I mean, I like many people, spent an awful lot of money in the last 2 months paying corporation tax, paying my personal tax before the end of January, people scrimping and saving to make sure that they can just get, particularly, you know, small business owners, people who are self-employed, you know, who don't have their taxes withheld at the beginning of the month or whatever it is. And they have no understanding of that. And I don't understand as well how we can be so highly taxed in this country and yet we haven't got any money.
You know, they don't seem to know how to run the country. You know, they, instead of cutting back on their expenses, which is what you and I would have to do if we suddenly, you know, had a debt to pay, they just carry on as if everything's fine. I mean, somebody told me the other day, Liam Halligan was on the other day, and he said, if we had to go cap in hand to the IMF, like we did in the 1970s, because we're bankrupt as a country, they haven't actually got enough money to help us out.
So I'll give you a perfect example of how Rachel Reeves does not understand our sector. So she brought in the national insurance increase, which the industry couldn't afford. So straight away, what happened? You start looking at reducing hours. You start looking at cutting staff costs. Maybe you'd have 6 working on a Saturday night. You reduce that down to 5, and you close bang on the hour. You might start opening slightly later to reduce overhead of costs. So what did she do? She came out and said, great news, I've decided I'm going to let you all open for longer, extend your hours. We've been saying, well, we can't do that. We're cutting the hours back, and you're telling us to stay long. So she doesn't understand business. And you're right, Mike. You know, I sold my business, both businesses, a couple of years ago, but I think back to 30 years ago when I'd have sleepless nights at the end of the month. You know, I've got to pay my PAYE bill. I've got to pay the staff next Friday, and I would honestly have fear for weeks and weeks and weeks having to get through this and building a business.
Of course.
No one in the cabinet have suffered that fear and anxiety. They don't understand how a business is run. They really don't. And I'm a strong believer that, you know, if you're going to have a health secretary, at least have a background understanding of medics. You know, if you're going to have someone talking about hospitality, well, have somebody at the table who understands hospitality. Not someone that's been to a pub for a photo shoot during a general election. That's not an understanding of the industry.
Right. Yeah, pulling a pint of Guinness into a wine glass.
I mean, honestly, ridiculous. What was that all about?
I know, just mad. Anyway, listen, we're out of time. Great to see you, Sacha, and good to see you in such good heart. I've got a message for you from Donald McLeod. He says, please say hi to Sacha for me. He was down here last week wreaking havoc all over London, I'm afraid. Took us a couple of days to recover. But listen, great to see you, and good luck with it all. We'll talk to you again soon, I hope.
Have a great weekend, Mike.
Thank you, Sacha. Sacha Lord there, reporting in to us from Manchester.